Arches, the 2,000 formations hiding beyond delicate arch. The most photographed arch in the world receives its best light at sunset, which is why, on any given evening between April and October, several hundred people hike 3 miles across exposed sandstone in 90-degree heat to stand at the same rim, at the same angle, and take the same photograph that has appeared on the Utah license plate since 1996. The photograph is not wrong. Delicate Arch is genuinely extraordinary. A 65-foot freestanding sandstone arch balanced on the edge of a slick rock bowl above a canyon that drops away to the Colorado River Valley below. The hike is real. The light is real. The feeling of arrival after the final steep pitch of open rock is real. But here is what the license plate does not show. Arches National Park contains over 2,000 documented arches, the highest concentration of natural arches on Earth. Delicate Arch is one of them. The remaining 1,999 are scattered across 76,000 acres of canyon country, the overwhelming majority of them unmarked on the standard visitor map, unreachable by the park's paved road system, and unvisited by the overwhelming majority of the 1.5 million people who enter the park each year. This is the story of the 1,999. The geology. Why here? Nowhere on Earth do natural arches exist in the concentration found here. The question of why has an answer that is both geological and almost implausibly precise. Everything begins with salt. 300 million years ago, an inland sea covering this region evaporated and left behind the Paradox Formation, a salt layer thousands of feet thick in places. Subsequent sediment deposition buried this salt under enormous pressure. Salt, unlike rock, flows under pressure. The buried salt began moving, forming domes, ridges, and anticlines that pushed the overlying rock layers upward and cracked them along predictable fault lines. Those cracks became the architecture of what followed. Entrada sandstone, the warm red rock that forms most of the park's arches, was deposited approximately 150 million years ago as wind-blown sand. Buried, compressed, and cemented, it hardened into a rock that is strong in compression but vulnerable to a very specific pattern of weathering. When water enters the vertical cracks, freezes, expands, and breaks away fins of rock, the remaining fins are exposed to secondary erosion, hollowing. From the inside outward until the shell of harder rock forms a span. The process requires the salt layer. The fault pattern, the specific composition of Entrada sandstone. The freeze-thaw cycle at this particular elevation and latitude. The precise rate of erosion that removes material fast enough to form spans, but slowly enough that the spans survive. Change any single variable significantly, and the arches do not form. This is why the density found at Arches National Park exists nowhere else on the planet. Beyond the road. The park's main road is 18 miles long. The park is 76,000 acres. Most visitors never leave the road. The viewpoints are accessible by car. Landscape Arch, the longest natural arch in North America at approximately 300 feet, is a flat 1-mile walk from the Devil's Garden car park. The Windows section, containing 4 major arches, is a short loop trail. Beyond the maintained trail network, Arches contains formations that are accessible only by off-trail navigation across open slick rock. No marked paths, no signage, no other visitors. The Klondike Bluffs section in the park's northwest receives a fraction of the attention of the main corridor, despite containing a concentration of arches that would be headline attractions in any other park. The Fiery Furnace, a maze of narrow sandstone fins in the park's central section, requires a permit and either a ranger-led tour or demonstrated navigational competence. The formations within it are not listed on any standard map. Visitors who enter it without preparation have needed rescue. Visitors who enter it with preparation find a version of the park that the road does not hint at. The road shows arches. The slick rock behind it is the park. The arches are falling. On the night of August 4th, 2008, Wall Arch collapsed. No earthquake, no storm, no human involvement. The Arch, a 40-foot span in the Devil's Garden section of the park, standing for thousands of years, fell sometime between a ranger's evening patrol and the following morning's trail check. When the first hiker arrived at dawn, it was rubble. Wall Arch had been listed on the park's arch inventory since the 1970s. It appeared on maps, it had a name, it had been photographed regularly, and then, without warning, the geology that had spent 200,000 years forming it spent approximately 4 seconds destroying it. This is not an unusual event in the history of Arches National Park. It is the expected outcome. The same freeze-thaw cycle that produces arches also destroys them. Ice expands the cracks that create spans. It also expands the cracks that eventually compromise them. Every arch in the park is at some point on a formation-to-collapse arc that the geology is running continuously, indifferent to whether the arch appears on a visitor map or a Utah license plate. Landscape Arch, the longest natural arch in North America, shed a slab roughly 11 feet long from its underside in September 1991. The trail beneath it was immediately closed. It is not reopened. At its narrowest point, Landscape Arch is now approximately 11 feet thick, a 300-foot span supported by a section of stone thinner than a park bench is wide. Geologists consider it one of the most precarious large arch spans on Earth. The Park Service does not predict when it will fall. They document its condition annually. The 2,000 arches currently recorded in the park are not a fixed inventory. The number changes. New arches are forming in the fins right now, the hollowing process working on rock faces that have not yet produced a span. Other arches are in the final stages of the same process, their remaining stone thinning toward the threshold beyond which the span cannot support its own weight. What visitors are photographing at Delicate Arch is not a geological monument. It is a geological event, one frame in a process that started 300 million years ago with a salt deposit and will continue long after Delicate Arch itself has joined Wall Arch in the rubble at the base of the Slick Rock Bowl. The park exists to protect the process, not the product. The impermanence runs in both directions. Before the arches were on any map, people were already watching them fall. The Fremont people, a culture that occupied this region roughly between 700 and 1300 AD, left petroglyphs across the canyon walls of what is now the park. The courthouse wash panel, near the main entrance and accessible on foot, contains carved figures that have survived longer than any arch currently standing in the park. They are not in the standard visitor materials. They sit within a quarter-mile of the main road, largely unvisited. The people who made them watched arches fall, too. The process was the same. The salt was the same. The freeze-thaw cycle was the same. The only thing that has changed is the inventory. The light, the Entrada sandstone that forms most of the park's arches, contains iron oxide in concentrations that respond dramatically to the angle of incident light. At midday, under direct overhead sun, the rock reads as uniformly red-orange, vivid but flat, the shadows short and uninformative. At sunrise and sunset, when light strikes the formations at low angles, the iron oxide produces colors that shift through a range, deep red to coral to amber to near white, as the sun moves through its final degrees above or below the horizon. The cross-bedding within the sandstone, those fossilized Jurassic wind patterns, becomes visible at low light angles in a way that flat midday light erases entirely. The fins cast shadows that reveal their own internal structure. The arches, backlit at sunrise, produce a rim of light around their spans that the midday photograph cannot replicate. The sunset crowd at Delicate Arch exists for a reason. The light is genuinely extraordinary there. But that same light reaches every formation across the park simultaneously. The 1,999 are experiencing it without an audience. The road is 18 miles long. The park is 76,000 acres, 2,000 arches, one on the license plate, one fewer than there was in August 2008. The rest are still out there, forming, standing, and falling on a schedule that geology set 300 million years ago. If this changed how you see Arches, the link in the description goes further. It covers the fiery furnace permit process, the Klondike Bluffs access route, the backcountry navigation basics for off-trail exploration, and the seasonal timing that puts you in the park before the reservation window fills. Arches rewards the visitor who arrives with a plan, and that starts by clicking the link in the description.